Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 84 for Monday, June 29th. My name is Pravod Merkazi, here as always with Jace Hatfield. And Jace, I got to be honest with you, it's a glorious Sunday morning, beautiful day that you and I don't know if it's beautiful in Chicago, but it's beautiful out here in Southern California. It's a glorious day, but I can't help but think if MLB fans, baseball fans, I know we're a college football show, are pining for these robot umps, just take a look at VAR and how much they can just take away from your joy as a soccer fan. And I mean, it just, I'm hurting right now, Jace. I'm hurting after Friday.
I was so devastated for you. I was all in on Team Iran. I was cheering them on from Chicago. And then last night, still have a chance to advance. Just need one of Algeria and Austria to win. They go up 1-0, 1-1, 2-1. And then it's 2-2 in the 93rd minute. Austria nets one to go up 3-2 with I think there's 6 extra minutes left. It's 94th minute. And then Austria just lets Algeria dribble straight down the pitch, untouched, free goal, tie it up 3-3. I think there was collusion among those two teams in that game.
Yeah.
The defense was very suspect after the 90th minute. Investigate at FIFA. That was ridiculous ending. I felt so bad.
We were sitting at a bar as I was telling you, and I told the guy I was hanging out with, I just need this game not to end in a draw, and then Iran moves on. And then they score the 93rd minute, late in the 93rd minute too, and I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. And I look down, I look back up, I'm like, fuck, what the hell? Why are we doing this to me? And this is, by the way, the Friday night thing, that was the goal that was ruled offsides. That's the second straight game Iran had a game that they were ruled offsides. I get it. There's rules and there's reasons for the offside rule, but come on, we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah, both the Iran goals that got pulled back were like a toenail off, and it at least it's like ABS where it's either on or off, and I respect it. But when you're on the wrong side of it, it's so frustrating when it's that minuscule.
What do you think about that though? I know we have ABS, but people are pining for full blown robot umps. But then also in college football, people want a chip in the football. People want the down markers to be if we can have automatic versions. So we're no longer bringing the chain out to see if the ball crossed the yardage required to make a first down or whatever. Are you in favor of that? Do you want that to become electronic?
I do. I like the chip in the football electronic idea. I have seen far too many football games where a horrible spot was the difference between this team having a chance to win it and now having to punt and they lose on defense. It happens relatively often. And I also think football, it's so hard to get a spot correctly because if you're a ref, first of all, there's just so many bodies, right? It's impossible to judge when a knee goes down, the second the knee goes down, or if it's an ankle or calf, whatever. And then similarly, where's the ball at that exact moment? It's really hard to tell. It makes forward progress difficult. And I do think they get it wrong often enough that, okay, let's just get this thing right. If you earn the first down, you deserve the first down. And if you haven't, you don't. So I'm fine with no arbitrary, in baseball, right? A strike or a ball call can come down to how well is your catcher, what's his report with the ump? Has he been a good catcher all game? Is he good at framing? There are ways to, I say manipulate, but control the umpire in a way that is beneficial. If you are a really good catcher, you know how to do that. But when it comes to spotting the ball in football, there's really not an art to getting umps to, or getting refs to give you better spots or worse. It just kind of depends on what the ref thought in the moment. Therefore, we should go spotting the ball based on electronics. And if anything, I think it's a little weird that we don't do that because it makes me think, why do they not want the objectively correct outcome to happen in these moments?
Yeah.
So I'm all for it.
Well, I think you illustrate two different viewpoints. In baseball, one of the reasons I was against so many changes earlier on, I like the changes that have been made now. I'm not a full-blown plant my flag traditionalist in baseball that it needs to be like this. I like the changes that have happened, but at the same time, in part of the game is not manipulating the ump, but catcher setting up in a way, framing in a way that eventually by the 6th inning, a pitch that was never a strike beforehand or in any other game, the ump just gotten to see it as a strike that day because of the pitcher catcher rapport. But in college football or in NFL, that 10-yard marker is black and white. Like, you got to get there. And you're right. Like, when the Eagles do the tush push, I don't care if the ref's right there. How do you know where the ball was? Everyone's just on top of each other. How do you know where, like, when Jalen Hurts' knee hits the ground, how do you know where the ball was to know that they necessarily made it across the line? You're just at best taking a guess. So I'm for that. Yeah, I'm just hurting a little bit this morning on Iran's elimination from the World Cup, but we're not going to let us slow that down. We got a fun show, and I know we say that every week, but every week for the last, I don't know, a couple months, there's been some big news that's happened in college football. So we've been reacting to that, not really doing like fun, creative college football off-season type shows. So today we get a chance to do that. Though there's been one piece of news we'll hit on. The NCAA Division I cabinet approved new eligibility rules. I think it's a massive change. 5 seasons, 5 years. We'll get into that. But we also want to talk about, like, well, let's do a recruiting check-in. We haven't done one of those in months, if at all. Who's in the top 10? Who's not in the top 10? That, like, Alabama's 49th? Is that going to last? Or are they going to suddenly experience a massive recruiting surge? We'll discuss that. And then there's some teams that I think the national media doesn't really talk a ton about, but they're experiencing either some changes or some tense moments heading into 2026, whether it's Cal and Tosh Lukoy, Will Stein at Kentucky, or Luke Fickell, who's entering a do or die season at Wisconsin. So we'll break them all down. Make sure you are following us on Twitter at F4Discussion, TikTok at Flag4Discussion. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and YouTube at Flag4Discussion spelled out. Make sure you're subscribed there. Make sure you ring the bell. Make sure you leave us 5-star reviews on the podcast platforms. We really appreciate everything that comes in from there. So, Jace, my friend, let's start with the 5v5 rule, or 5 seasons, 5 years rule. So the one piece of news that happened, the NCAA Division I cabinet, they approved new eligibility rules for all sports. It's not just college football, it's all sports. Basically, the brass tacks, the bullet points are: athletes get 5 seasons and 5 years. The second their college eligibility starts, that's when the 5-season eligibility rule starts. The traditional rule was, like, there was 4 seasons of competition over a 5-year window. Now you get 5 seasons to play 5 years. So the redshirt rule is dead, essentially. I'm not entirely sure if that means you get to play the full 5, or like the redshirt is fully dead, but I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more. But it's essentially dead. If there's some sports that some kids try to delay a year of starting their college eligibility so they can start it a little bit later, a little bit older. They added a 19th birthday trigger. Basically, the example that I have on the dock is like Canadian or junior hockey kids who play in a different league before they start their college years. The 19th birthday trigger is basically saying, if you're committed to a school, if you're going to be enrolled at a school and you're not there, the eligibility clock starts automatically at 19. Now there are exceptions to this rule. There's like the mission. If a kid's going on a mission for 2 years out of high school, that they get to start their full 5 years and 5 seasons, 5 years clock after they return. The mission doesn't take up 2 years of eligibility there. And then the last thing I'll say is, this rule essentially waives and eliminates all medical hardship waivers. It gets rid of any extension of eligibility waivers. It's trying to eliminate the Joey Aguilars suing Tennessee courts, trying to get another year of eligibility. It's trying to eliminate Trinidad Chambliss suing Oxford, Mississippi court, trying to get another year of eligibility. What is your first reaction to it?
Let's start with I'll start with a small topic I want to talk about regarding it. And it's a comment you made: the death of the traditional red shirt. There's going to be, like you said, with missions, and there's going to be ways to get something similar. But you're done as the days where you're a true freshman, you come in and you redshirt for a season and you move forward. I actually think this is going to be a good change for the transfer portal issue that we've seen. I actually think this is going to incentivize kids to stay. at their schools versus leaving after a singular year. A big issue we've had the last 2 or 3 seasons now are kids get to a school, true freshmen, highly rated recruit, kid red shirts, normal. School's like, hey, you're not really going to play anyways this year. You might as well save your eligibility. Like from a school's perspective, it's a good thing. You save your eligibility. You still going to be here, practice, learn, grow, literally and figuratively grow. And, you'll be a better football player by the end of it. But unfortunately, the last couple of years, players, regardless of it being a good thing for them, I think they just feel left out. They get there, they can't play, they don't suit up for games. If, it's like, okay, you're not going to play at all, so you don't need to suit. If they do play, it's like some lousy minutes against a subpar team late in a game that's already decided. And I think they feel left out. They get frustrated and they say, well, I could easily go to Kentucky and play. I could easily go to South Carolina and play. So this is stupid. And they just leave. They want to play right away and they leave. So I do think this allows teams to, hey, go play this meaningful-ish quarter that we have. Hey, go play this drive. I think it allows teams to give them enough of a taste of playing time so that these kids are maybe a little bit more willing to stay, or they kind of see what the vision is and like, okay, this is a lot better. So I think it'll help reduce the number of not useless, but just maybe too quick transfers. Guys who didn't really stick it out at a school, didn't play, so they leave. I do think it'll help that regard. So that was kind of my first initial reaction with how this is going to impact the traditional red shirt, I guess I should say.
So I actually looked it up while you were discussing it, and I'll clarify what I said earlier. It actually fully kills the red shirt. So you're right. There's no longer, coaches don't have to be quote unquote strategic, because up until 2 days ago, coaches would have to plan out, all right, I have this freshman coming in and he's a 5-star kid. I want to get him playing time. I want to get him development, but I can't play him in more than 4 regular season games, or else he burns his red shirt, as they say. And that counts as his true freshman season instead of the redshirt freshman. And then we lose a year of eligibility for him, essentially. Now, these kids can play in all 12 regular season games, all the championship games if their teams are lucky enough to make them, or good enough to make them, and he can play in essentially 60 college football games. So for me, like, just having the redshirt rule gone, I think it frees up not only just players to like not only does it help with the transfer probability, like you said, but it also allows coaches to fully develop a kid. How many times do you think in our past watching like our team or similar teams, you're going into the fourth quarter against, Rutgers, and you're up by 30, and there are some most of the backups are in, but there are some kids like you just want to see. And also that's a cool part of for fans. Like, I want to see this 5-star kid that maybe he's not good enough to start. Maybe he's not good enough to get 50 snaps in a game, but I want to see that raw talent, raw athleticism. There's so many times in college football that a kid will commit to your school, and you don't see him for 2.5 years because he's developing, he's gaining weight, he's getting stronger to get onto the field. Now this gives coaches the ability not to be strategic with their redshirt usage, but more strategic with how they get to develop a kid and get him real on-field action.
That's a great point. Like, when you're at a game or you're watching on TV, you're like, that 5-star freshman or that highly touted 4-star athlete, this would be a great opportunity. But man, you don't want to do it. You don't want to waste the game if you're the coach, so you don't play him. And then similarly on the flip side is the opposite of that, where a coach accidentally, like a guy goes out there on special teams. I believe I'll speak with Oregon. Neem Offord had a scenario where I think he burned a red shirt because he played a few special teams snaps late in games. And there was not controversy among actual Oregon personnel or anything, but on social media, Oregon fans were like, why did we just burn this 5-star kid's red shirt on a special teams play? And so that's the moment too, where you're wondering, was that intentional or was that just an oversight by coaching staff and he got out there and he shouldn't have, and now he burned it. So it also helps clear up that. I think those scenarios hopefully go away where kids accidentally burn, or there's always a scenario too where a kid's third in the depth chart, but there's some injuries that happen and you're up late in a game. So coach is now torn. Do I play this slightly injured backup and hope he stays healthy, or do I burn this kid's red shirt? I get rid of those tough moments and tough decisions as well. One big fish implication, I think, from this too that I wanted to talk about, it's bigger than I think the red shirt.
Yeah.
Is the old model was very much built around the what if scenarios, right? There were so many waiver opportunities, and it was they were trying to
It was
protect
subjective.
everyone. Yeah, everyone and every potential thing that could happen to someone was protected. And that's, all these last couple of years where we've seen a million waivers and guys just going to multiple courts until they get the waiver decision that they want. I like the idea of just eliminating, kind of a blanket elimination of, oh, but I had this injury, I went to this JUCO, I went to this school, I had this weird thing happen to me. I understand that there are going to be kids that do have crazy what if scenarios that will probably get screwed over by these rules. But I would
Yeah.
rather 5 to 10 kids per year get on the wrong end of the stick and then have 90,000 kids who are getting funneled correctly than let everyone abuse the rules and everybody figure out their what if scenario. I think a blanket scenario, yes, it's harsh, but it also it gives some power back to the NCAA. It gives some control back, and it kind of helps eliminate the softness of saying, hey, we got to account for everybody. Unfortunately, you you might have 3 straight years of an injury, but if you look at like a Cam McCormick who played 9 years or 7 years of college football, great guy. I don't want to take anything away from him, but I don't know if like his 9 years and him taking all those roster spots from other kids was necessarily the most beneficial thing to college football or the most beneficial thing to the Miami Hurricanes or whatever schools that, he ended up at. So I do like the idea of saying, hey, sorry, sucks to suck if you end up on the wrong end of this, but we need to protect our sport.
Yeah. So I think what you said is right on. You hit it right on the nail because I would much rather protect. I honestly am surprised and appreciative that the NCAA even had rules to protect student athletes because that is not normally their MO. But I am pretty happy at this point with this rule of instead of trying to protect the 1 to 5 to 10 kids who like unlike unfortunately Cam McCormick, poor guy had busted his ankle, went to surgery. Surgery it was out for a full year his sophomore year. Did surgery didn't work, had to have another surgery out for a full year his junior year. He got like 4 more years of eligibility, and that's how he played the 8 years. And that like I think when those scenarios come up because they're going to come up again, you and I are going to sit on this podcast and be like, "Man, I wish that kid got a fair shot at it. I wish that kid got like 4 more years, 2 more years to at least get to play college football." But in that in that same like realm, I like Trinidad Chambliss, the way he won his injunction was his lawyers took advantage of like it was a subjective language in the old medical waiver system. It basically saying like the NCAA arbitrarily denied his injury claim from his days at Ferris State. So now what this new rule does is basically say, hey, none of those waivers are in here. There's no subjectivity. There's none of those waivers. The hard line is it's 5 for 5. The NCAA is basically saying like judges can't have a legal leg to stand on. Lawyers can't have a legal leg to stand on when players demand their sixth or seventh years. And like the redshirt rule is the biggest thing for you and I in terms of program building. But I think the cleaning up of the Trinidad Chamblisses, and I hate using the poor kid as like the example, but he is the example, especially for this year, of kids who yes, they got hurt 1 year, but, like, they essentially their lawyers found a loophole in the old laws, found a gray area, and he was able to take advantage of it, come back for another year, make more NIL, and delay his entrance into the NFL. And you and I this year are gonna love watching Trinidad play, but I think there's always gonna be something in the back of my mind of, like, "Shoot, man, like, you said it right. I'd rather have 5 to 10 kids unfortunately get shafted, but funnel 90,000 kids through correctly, or however many kids. Because
Yeah.
the the other aspect of it is, like, one of the reasons Trinidad and guys like them have gotten 7, 8 years of eligibility is the COVID year also gave everyone an eligibility year. So, and on top of what they also had an extra one, and right after COVID, the reflection from the major beat writers across college football was there's a bottlenecking that's going to happen in the sport. Teams obviously want to keep these guys who have been in the sport for a long time, productive, but they're like 27 now. But they want to keep them because they still have eligibility. But how are they going to keep bringing in young kids to keep developing, keep recruiting? And so there was just a bottlenecking thing that was happening in college football outside of just like feeling weird that there was a 24-year-old, 25-year-old who still had 2 more years of eligibility after that. So I think this is huge for the sport. I think this is what, like we said about the Brendan Sorsby thing of, I've never seen a incident in college football or in any sport be so unanimously hated on by everybody. I haven't seen a rule in college football that was so unanimously pushed for. I think everybody wanted, just like, even if they didn't want specific 5-for-5, they wanted standardized eligibility rules with like hard lines, no more gray area, no more subjective language in the waiver possibilities. Like, hey kid, you come here, it might screw you over, but you're 5-for-5.
And 5-for-5 is still pretty generous. Like that's still a fifth year that every kid gets guaranteed. And something to never be over, because obviously the rules are going to reel back on student athletes a little bit. Like if you're a student athlete, this is less beneficial than the previous model. And so for those of you who are listening and coming to the defense of the student athlete, I want you to remember one big thing, especially when it comes to Division I college football athletes. They're still making NIL money. So they're still profiting. They still get 5 years of eligibility. And at the end of the day, like I'm trying to say this nicely. They still get like, if you look at the students at a university and the student athletes, especially the Division I football players, they still get amazing treatment. They still get access to some of the best facilities in the world. They still get their schools, for the most part, paid for. Yeah, the best facilities in the world. Free education. And a fifth year means you could get a free master's degree out of this if you work hard. You still get access to like the best living on campus, the best food on campus. You still get NIL money. Like they're still getting such an amazing experience over every other student at these schools that if you're starting to find yourself feel bad for them, I understand. But remember, like, I've had friends in college who had traumatic things happen to them in life, and they didn't get a fifth year of school. You know, they were at the mercy of a professor saying, yeah, frick off. I've heard that excuse.
Get it done.
You know? Yeah. So as for every time you find yourself like, you know, they're not going to, now that redshirt year is gone, just remember they still have it so much better than they used to, and then everyone else does.
I don't even think we need to like make people feel better about this. I don't know where we went wrong that people have to we have to coddle. I'm not the old man like screaming on his lawn thing, but like, why are we in a position where we have to explain why a 26-year-old shouldn't be in college football? Like,
that's
or
a
20, point. Like, why are we in a position where we're like, that guy should be playing pro? And that is from the general essence of it, is that guy should either be starting his professional career or playing pro football, pro basketball, pro hockey, whatever, pro baseball, whatever it is. Like, it also at some point we just have to remember that. Maybe it was the COVID year of eligibility plus all of the weird gray areas that are now not being enforced by the NCAA that like have gotten people used to like, hey, yeah, 6th, 7th, 8th years of eligibility. That's cool. Like, no, like these kids this is supposed to be a funneling system to college. College is supposed to be that time where whether you're a student or a student athlete, you are developing yourself for the real world. We don't need to delay that anymore. Like at some point, there are still a million other kids that are going to be coming in after you. You don't need to stay in college. Let them have their turn. So I don't know where we start coddling them, but I appreciate you at least trying to make people feel better. Let's move to recruiting. So recruiting right now is really interesting, at least in my books. Currently, the top 10 in recruiting is Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Miami, Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Auburn, Florida. We're recording this at 9 a.m. my time on June 28th. So obviously this is going to be released June 29th. Maybe someone gets a commit, maybe someone gets a decommit, and it changes. But right now, that is the top 10. Obviously, there's a long ways to go until the December early national signing day, and a long ways to go until eventual national signing day. What is most interesting to me is there are teams in this list that you expect to be here. You expect Texas to be here. You expect Miami to be here. You expect Oregon to be here. You expect Ohio State to be here. Oklahoma, even. In recent years, Texas Tech isn't that surprising to be up in the top 10, top 12 with how much money. But the teams that are not in here is almost just as interesting to me. Georgia's sitting at 15th in the country. USC, that had the best class in the country last year, is sitting at 14th. Penn State, Matt Campbell, new coach, you almost give them a pass on that, but they're sitting at 13th in the country. LSU, Lane Kiffin, I mean, they have a great average rating per recruit. And by the way, this is all based off of 24/7. They're sitting at 18th in the country. Michigan, they've won a national championship in recent years. They're sitting at 22nd in the country. I mean, I could keep going. Colorado's at 35th. Alabama's at 49th in the country in recruiting right now. Indiana, national champion, they're at 40th in the country in recruiting right now. So we're sitting here June 28th. I know recruiting is not necessarily your be-all, end-all, but there's a reason good teams are good teams. You could either go with the window program approach and recruit like 3 stars, develop them, and hope that in the third, fourth years they're ready to compete at a high level, or you could keep restocking the cupboard and recruit at a high level. Remember the Dan Mullen, Kirby Smart spat like 3 years ago before Dan Mullen got fired. Dan Mullen was asked in a press conference in Florida, hey, what's going on in recruiting? And Dan Mullen's response was, I'll worry about that during recruiting season. And that's just not something you can say in this day and age in college football, especially in the SEC. Every day is recruiting season. And Kirby Smart's rebuttal to that was, I'm a great coach. I'm a better coach if I got dogs in the room. Like I'm a better coach if I have better players. So that's a long way of me to ask you, Jace, not necessarily what's your overall opinion on this top 10 right now, but which of this group will last and which of this group will eventually fall out of the top 10? What do you think of the recruiting right now?
I like that a lot. The team that shocks me the most in the top 10 right now is Auburn. They've had a rough go at college football as a whole the last handful of years. They have failed a few of like Cam Coleman has now left. Deuce McKnight has now left. Like the few of the big names they've gotten the last handful of years have transferred out. They haven't really produced many big NFL players recently or high draft picks. They've had a drive spell in Auburn's history. They bring in Alex Golesh year one, someone you and I have been consistently high on. But also, he's coming from USF. It's not like he's this prolific recruiter that is known for having the best offenses and the best recruiting. And he's come in year one at Auburn, and they are the 9th ranked class in the country. Alabama, as you mentioned, is down to 49. That's a very interesting dynamic that usually we see Alabama over Auburn. If I had to bet today, I do think Alabama will end up finishing over Auburn. Something also just to know about Auburn that's crazy is their reach right now. Like it's not like they're just recruiting. They're recruiting, yes, the South very well, but they have the number 78 running player in the country, is the 5th running back overall from Illinois. They have him signed. They have 3 players from Maryland signed. The number 15 offensive tackle from Delaware signed. But they're going. They have
committed.
Committed. Sorry, they have these players from all over the U.S. committed to them currently. A bunch of the Carolinas, Tennessee, a couple guys from there. More Maryland than I thought. There's 4 players from Maryland. So when you go through this, they're recruiting Alabama well, they're recruiting Georgia well, but their ability to go out to different pockets in the country and recruit has been incredibly surprising. I would love to hear, it'll be really fun to track throughout the season if this stays, if it doesn't. But also, I would love to hear from one of these guys or from Golesh himself, like what's changed? Like, I did not know he was a recruiter like this until now. Maybe they've kind of taken it more seriously, bringing him in. But that was the first thing that caught my eye. As soon as I saw the top 10 list, I was like, whoa, Auburn's back. It's probably been a little while for him.
Yeah, I think that's when you're looking at it. And by the way, when we first started putting this segment together, Ohio State was out of the top 10. And my reaction is similar to yours. If you were asked me, like, gun to my head right now, would I be willing to bet Ohio State finishes out of the top 10 in recruiting? I would say absolutely not. And there's a long ways to go. So, but in this day and age, a lot of teams are trying to finish their recruiting before college football season. Like Texas A&M is 24 commits, Miami is 19, Oklahoma is 26, Oregon is 20, Auburn is 24, Clemson is 24. Like, teams are trying to at least finish, quote unquote, the bulk of their recruiting class now. So during the season, they can focus on the big fish and then also focus on football. And after that, they can go into and try to flip guys. Maybe December comes around and all of a sudden you see a major reshuffling in this order. this is based off of 24/7's recruiting points and everything. So Texas A&M, whatever you want to say, as of right now, has 277 total recruiting points. They're first in the country. Number 10, Florida has 240 points, 240.69 points in terms of recruiting points based off their commits, and they're 10th in the country. Just to give you an example, last year, 2026, USC was first in the country. They had 302 total recruiting points. 10th place was Texas A&M at 273.45. I only say that to say, like, Texas A&M's current points is higher than they had all of last year, but that got them to 10th in the country in recruiting. Right now they're first. So there is a bunch of reshuffling to happen. It's just fascinating to me. I think the other question I have to is this more of a sign of maybe NIL taking over? Maybe like Auburn, like you said, maybe Alex Golsh's hiring is a booster saying, all right, we're all in now. We have to get it right. We've had multiple coaches since Gus that have really screwed this up. Or like Florida, they're like, okay, Billy's gone. He's always had the resources. Now he's got to go at least put it in the right place. Summerall's in. They're 10th in the country. Is it an aspect of NIL that's leading Texas Tech, Auburn, and Florida into the top 10? Or is it an aspect of just with the transfer portal being so prevalent, you losing so many guys, you see like USC has 14 commits. They brought in 35 kids last year, so maybe they don't need as much. Georgia has 17 commits. LSU, who has 14 commits, very high ratings per commit, but 14. Alabama, they're 49th, but they have 13 commits total. I guess like my question is there more of is this more NIL or is there more of a emphasis, do you think, being placed on let's get the right kids, not the right amount of kids? Like, let's get the kids that we know for sure they're bought in. We can invest in them. They're going to stay here. They can develop here. They're going to be Alabama Crimson Tide kids for 4 or 5 years. Or instead of like, let's bring in 4 guys, we're going to lose 2 of them, but it'll just make our recruiting class better if I bring in the 4.
I think recruiting is the least standardized and the least straightforward that it's ever been. And I think because of that, it's created 2 different schools of thoughts. I think on one side, you have teams and programs who look at recruiting and say, you know what, with the transfer portal and with all the messing, like every day it seems eligibility changes, transfer portal changes, recruiting changes. They're like, you know what, let's use the portal while we have it. We'll figure that out later. We'll do what you said. We'll recruit these 10 to 15 guys who fit our mold, that fit us, that we know will stay, that we're bought in on. And we'll buy in on those 15 guys, let's call it. Yes, it's not going to be a sexy recruiting ranking, but I think these guys are bought in and we'll figure everything else out with the portal later. I think that's one school of thought. So you're seeing those teams, the Alabamas of the world, that are a little bit more down that we're expecting to be higher up. On the flip side, I think that opens up a door when big programs aren't stuff, like when Alabama isn't stuffing 30-person classes with 10 5-stars and 24 stars. That opens up a lot of 5-stars and a lot of 4-stars for everyone else to go after. So I think I don't want to call them lesser programs in the sense that these are like Auburns of the world that are lesser Oklahoma. They're just, maybe they're not usually the guys taking Alabama's players, but I think they're seeing an opportunity saying, well, look, if these guys are available, 1, I think we should go after them. And 2, what if they do crack down on eligibility? What if they do crack down on NIL and transfer portal, and all of a sudden the transfer portal becomes less available, and all of a sudden NIL becomes a lot more standardized? It's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper to get a 18-year-old out of high school than it is to go get the number 1 QB in the transfer portal.
Right.
I'd rather just try and take my odds with a recruit. So I think there's 2 schools of thoughts. There's teams saying, I don't think they'll figure it out. We can still use the portal down the road. And teams saying, I think we got to take advantage of the open talent on the market. This is probably the most open this talent has been and will be. Similarly, I think they're going to crack down. So let's just lock in recruiting now. I think that's why we've seen disparities of USC signing 31 plus kids in a class and Alabama signing 13. I don't think it's because USC is 18 kids better than Alabama. I think it's Alabama's thinking one way, USC's thinking the other. And that it's kind of fun. It creates a lot more parity when there's new schools of thoughts. It creates a lot more opportunity for programs who don't normally get the big names to come up and try and get a few of them. I also think with how open the transfer portal has been, recruits themselves have rethought the idea of what makes them want to commit where. I think kids used to commit where they were going to go to the NFL, and I think kids now are more willing to commit where they can play right away. And that
Right.
also opens the door. If I'm Kentucky, I can offer a 5-star kid at Kentucky day one playing time. I just don't have the bodies above him that's even more talented. But if you're at Texas A&M, I don't know if you can offer a 5-star QB Marcel Reed's job. You got to tell him, hey, man, you're going to have to wait a little bit here. So I think that has also played a factor.
So it's actually really interesting because the 24/7, I mean, you can look at Rivals, you can look at On3, whatever recruiting rankings you want to look at, by all means, go for it. It is all a little bit subjective, at least based off of what the scouts and the people actually looking at these kids rate them. But 24/7 basically ranks its teams based off of cumulative points that each recruit is worth. On3's recruiting rankings ranks them by average rating per recruit. So if you could have 50 guys committed, but it doesn't matter, like, you won't be first in the country because of just quantity of players for On3. You'll be first in the country if you have the highest average rating per recruit. And Jace, listen to this. This is really fascinating. On 24/7, I just sorted the top 10 the recruiting classes based off of just average rating per recruit. First of all, how insane is Texas A&M's recruiting class? They are number one in both. They are number one in average rating per recruit and number one in cumulative recruiting points. They have 24 kids, and their average rating per recruit is 91.91. Number two in that is USC. They're 14th in the country in cumulative points, and in how we judge recruiting on 24/7. But their average rating per recruit is 91.57. LSU, we just said they have 14 commits, 91.5. Miami, they're third in the country, but they're fourth in average rating per recruit. There are several teams that are above the 90 threshold. It's Georgia at 90.00, and then going up is Oregon, Texas Tech, Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Miami, LSU, USC, and Texas A&M. So that is how I've decided I'm going to start judging recruiting in general, because last year USC had a wonderful recruiting class. They brought in a lot of talent, but they also brought in 35 guys. How many of those guys, not because of USC's fault, but just because of the quantity of players they brought in, are going to be there in 2 years? I would venture to guess like half of them, if that. But if you look at just teams that are like, I'm going for quality over quantity, that's the most fascinating part. Like, that's how I start looking at recruiting, is like, USC might be 14th in the country. But look, their quality, they have 2 5-stars, 7 4-stars, 5 3-stars, 14 commits right now. I'm sure that'll eventually go up to 17 to 20 commits by National Signing Day. But for now, that's a very impressive recruiting class, despite it just looking at 14. You're going for talent and guys who can help immediately at this point.
It's been really fun. You've got me going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Also, I think you've got a great strategy of looking at recruits. I think that's just in the era of, I have no idea what the rules of college football eligibility, transfer portal, or NIL are going to look like next year. I think just going sheer player overall, how many players can you bring in that are of quality is probably the best way to look at it. But I'm going down the rabbit hole here. I'm assuming this is probably because if you go to Army for football, you're enrolling as well. So it's a little bit different. Yeah. They have 50 commits. One of them is a 3-star. Everyone else is just like regular kids, but they have 50 commits, which was hilarious to see. The worst Power 4 team that I can find is SMU. Very surprisingly, only 7 commits, 1 4-star, 6 3-stars. That rounds out their whole class so far. And then that, as much as I can find, that is the last Power 4 team I can find, which is shocking. A lot of talent in the Texas region alone, let alone Dallas, Fort Worth, where they're at. Yeah, that's a school, I think, from my knowledge, that's well-funded school, wealthy alums. Rhett Lashley is a coach.
But how many schools in Texas are well-funded? Like, at this point with Texas Tech, Texas, they're not only well-funded, but they are the most well-funded schools in the country with Texas and Texas Tech.
Yeah. So yeah, SMU, interesting. I definitely would not have picked them, but and then right down there with them is Baylor. So yeah, maybe the bottom feeder Texas, bottom feeder sounds harsh. The lesser funded Texas schools are getting poached because also we've seen Texas talent the last handful of years leave the state too and kind of go elsewhere. So that is interesting. Those schools are behind schools like Appalachian State, James Madison, BYU, Boise State, Oregon State, Fresno State, San Diego State. Texas State's above those other Texas schools. So
12.
pretty interesting. Yeah, the Pac-12. The
That's
Pac-12 rounds out a lot of 40 to 60.
Hey, good for them. I mean, I would take it. We still back the pack here, but no,
For life.
I think of course, I think like recruiting. I've said it a bunch. I don't want to be like I don't want to keep like sounding like a broken record. This will change, but like Oklahoma having 26 commits, I don't think they're going to add 20 more. So that is the base of their recruiting class, and there's a big group of fans. No matter what, will say, I bet you half of Oklahoma's commits are going to be gone by December. I'm like, as long as Brent Venables is there, as long as their GM's there, like I would venture to guess 24 of those guys will sign on early national signing day. And then like they might have a flip or two that are scary. And then we'll see how it goes from there. The flips that kid fans always like to hate about, very few and far between in terms of actually happening. There are headliners on early national signing day, but they don't really happen very often. So recruiting check-in is done. Let's try to break down some teams that the national media, the paid media, because we're not paid for this. We do it for the love of the game. Although if you want to pay us, hit us up. We have an email. The paid media don't talk about these teams very often, but I thought it would be like kind of fun to just at least break them down a little bit, talk about what's happened since the last time they snapped the football in a real college football game, and talk about how this next season potentially could go. So, granted, you at home, you don't have to know everything about these teams. Jason and I certainly don't know everything about these teams, but it's a fun conversation to have in terms of what the situation they are in right now. So let's start with Cal. So Cal fires Justin Wilcox at the end of the year, longtime coach there. Honestly, Justin Wilcox, Chase, correct me if I'm wrong. When he first got hired there, he got a mandate like you got to fix the defense, but keep the offense as fun as it is because then we can actually compete. He ended up fixing the defense, but then the offense kind of went into the tank. And then the last couple of years, with having recruiting terribly and everything, they have not been able to essentially get either side right. They finally got like a lightning in the bottle with JKS at quarterback this past year. They fire Justin Wilcox, bring in Tosh Lupoy, defensive coordinator from Oregon. He's a Cal alum. Since then, Ron Rivera's kind of had to match the recruiting side of things at Cal to meet Tosh's drive. I mean, Tosh is a former Saban disciple. You know, you don't normally see guys like him, all due respect to Cal, going to Cal to coach. But with Tosh being an alum of Cal, he's obviously very passionate about the program. The first thing he did after getting hired was fly to Hawaii to make sure JKS doesn't enter the portal, comes back out of it. They kept Nick Rolovich on the staff. Basically, a lot of the kids on that team after Wilcox got fired were pining for Rolovich to be the head coach. So I think that was like a very strategic move by Tosh and his staff to keep him on. And a lot of these spring practices for them has become, let's shift our identity. Tosh brings in that same mindset that Oregon plays on. He brings in that mindset that he coached with Saban of like trenches win football games. And spring practice has been extremely, maybe a work in progress, but extremely physical, extremely like violent, like trying to get in on it. Right now, this is the biggest part for me. Like this next year's obviously they want to win. But right now, the biggest part for me is Cal is 20th in the country in recruiting. They have 8 4-stars, 15 3-stars. Average rating per recruit is 88. You might sit at home and be like, we were just talking about Texas A&M being so high up, USC being so high up, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Oregon. This is huge for Cal. They finished 50th in 2026 in recruiting. They finished 66th in 2025. They finished 53rd in 2024. They are 20th in the country right now. They enter the season with an over-under win total of 6.5 wins. How are we feeling about Cal heading into this year? I'm fascinated to see how Tosh Lupoy operates as a head coach.
I am very high on Cal coming into this season. I think they play I think the ACC is up for grabs. Once again, this year, Miami's going to be the favorite and rightfully so. But I think second place, third place, fourth place, all of that's well up for grabs. I don't even want to call Miami safe because we've seen how anytime we thought Clemson was safe in the ACC last year, look what happened to them. So I think that Cal has done a phenomenal job rebuilding this roster. Obviously, keeping JKS was tremendous, tremendous work. He's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country next year, and I'm sure by his junior year, he's going to be Heisman contender, bona fide first-round NFL pick hype. And then around him, so that you mentioned they retain a good amount of the O-line, which was one of the few slightly bright spots for Cal football. You retain 3 starters in the O-line. That's pretty big work for a Power 4 team that maybe underperformed. They retransferred or they reinvent the wide receiver room of transfers. Notably, Chase Hendricks from Ohio. He's a 1,000-yard receiver at Ohio last year. They bring him in. He was highly productive. They bring Ian Strong from Rutgers on a team that had just a horrible year. He had almost 800 receiving yards, so he was kind of one of their few bright spots. They bring in Cooper Perry from Oregon, who obviously Coach Tosh knows pretty well at that point. He was a highly rated recruit, just kind of got lost in a really good depth chart, but
he's a really good player.
Good athleticism, good size, and he's going to be a wide receiver 3. Now they bring in Adam Muhammad, transfer running back out of Washington. I've been saying it for years. I think he was consistently the more threatening running back in the Washington room. They love Jonah Coleman. They stuck with Jonah Coleman as the bell cow. You get an Adam Muhammad, who I think is, like I said, I thought he was always better than Jonah Coleman. Very athletic, and he hasn't taken a lot of hits because he's spent his first 2 years of college kind of being a backup. So I love what they've done on offense. I think they've given JKS real receiving weapons, a real running back. They return the O-line that he knows. It's his 2 guards in the center, so he's going to feel some comfort there. And then I like the idea of let's go after guys who were productive at smaller schools for offense. And then defense, they kind of did the opposite. They went after a bunch of guys who were highly touted recruits and have sat the bench at Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ole Miss, and they bring in Texas A&M, and they bring them in. So you bring in Jericho Johnson to be your new nose tackle. He was a really highly touted player out of Oregon, kind of expected to be the next big thing for the Ducks, and he is now at Cal due to some players staying. They got Tristan Jernigan and Solomon Williams, linebackers out of Texas A&M, both high recruits. Just didn't get a lot of playing time. Now they're here. Daniel Harris, a cornerback from Georgia, highly rated recruit, didn't get a lot of playing time. And then you get Ricky Fletcher at corner on the other side from Ole Miss, high rated recruit, didn't get a lot of playing time. So on offense, you've got proven players around a young quarterback that you have a lot of faith in. And on defense, you've got guys with size, guys with athleticism, just haven't figured it out on the field. Tosh is a defensive mind. If they figure out how to get these players who haven't played a lot on defense to play like at their potential, and then you mix it in with an offense that should be pretty solid around JKS, this is a very dangerous team. Yeah. And based off, without looking at the schedule, I like the idea of over 6.5. Pulling up the schedule, guess who they got week 1? This is appointment TV for me.
Yeah.
They got the Bruins, Pac-12 After Dark, Saturday, September 5th, 9:30 p.m. Central. Must watch. Oh yeah,
we're gonna be on Zoom or FaceTime. Absolutely. Like
might just fly out the sickos
and need to watch
for the weekend just to watch that together.
Hey, I have cousins who go to Cal. We could just all go together. Fly up there. Look, I agree with you. I'm high on them this year. I mean, I think people need to reconsider their expectations. Like reorganizing their head. We're not saying Cal is like Tosh is building Cal to be an Indiana or Tosh is building Cal to take over the sport right now. Well, what I like about what Tosh is doing is he's reinvigorating a brand. He's reinvigorating something that's just been dead. Like Cal football hasn't been like bad. They've been boring. And they've been boring and irrelevant or almost worse than bad. Like you'd rather be Florida State right now than Cal was at the end of last year, because at least the second Mike Norvell is fired or moves on or whatever, there's going to be hundreds of coaches that are going to be like lined up wanting that job. Cal needed an alum like Tosh to come in, because at least Tosh Lupoy, I don't know what kind of coach he'll be. I think he's a brilliant defensive mind. He sometimes had some lapses in judgment, I think. And you also agreed, like, as the DC at Oregon, Nick Saban stripped him of play calling duties when he was at Alabama. So he's had some growth moments for sure. But he's a brilliant coach. I don't know what kind of coach he'll be on the field, but what he does bring is the never die intense recruiting perspective of I just need better players and I'll hire the right people to coach them. I'll hire the right people to coach with me. And yes, Tosh is going to be in his first year of coaching as a head coach. He's also had about a decade working for Nick Saban, about 4 years working for Dan Lanning. Like, not that that's specifically working on like preparing you to be a head coach, but it is in general. And for what it's worth, his GM is Ron Rivera. And whatever you think of Ron Rivera as a head coach in the NFL, he anytime he has like head coaching questions, he can just go to his GM in general. So there's aspects of all of that.
Ron
I'm
Rivera's
high
playing
on
the Super
Cal.
Bowl. He's coach. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm high on Cal in general. One thing I appreciate about what Tosh did is sometimes you get defensive coaches come in and they're like, I'm going to win with my defense. Like the Mike Zimmers of the world in Minnesota. I'm going to win with my defense, slow the game down, make not take a lot of risk on offense, run the ball. But like when Dan Lanning came to Oregon, we were a little afraid of that. But then he made an emphasis on being explosive. Tosh at Cal, now we haven't seen their offense yet, but you assume with JKS, Adam Muhammad, the receivers you mentioned like Cooper Perry, they're going to be an explosive offense. That defense has got to have to catch up, and I honestly think that is one of the reasons Tosh was extra aggressive in getting the backups at Oregon to join his defensive line, because those kids probably would have started next year or the year after for Oregon, but they didn't want to wait while Oregon's going for everything with all the seniors this year, like I think he basically was like, I can't develop a defense when I could have the best offense in the ACC over here. Because Miami, they should be good. They should be really good, but we don't. They've lost a lot on the offensive line. They lost their quarterback. They lost a lot. They should definitely be better than Cal, but at least like you might be closing the gap a little bit. UCLA, you said first game. That's appointment TV for both of us. Then they go out to Syracuse. I think, and then they have Wagner at home. One thing that helps is Clemson and Virginia Tech are at home. They go to Nevada to play UNLV. So it's not like a murderer's row of a schedule. They got UCLA. They're all tough teams. UCLA, Syracuse, Clemson, Virginia Tech. I left out UNLV and Wagner. They have a pretty tough end of October, early November. They go to SMU. The week after, they go to NC State. The week after that, they go to Virginia. So if they can come out of that with 1 or 2 wins, I'm pretty happy taking the over on the 6.5 as it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. You avoid the one team I'm confident in the ACC is Miami. You avoid them. I think that's immediately a big win. And like you said, at SMU, at NC State, at Virginia, those could all be frisky. But if you look at the top of the ACC last year, is Virginia 11-3 good again? To be determined. Is Duke going to be good again? To be determined. They don't even play them. Like Georgia Tech, they don't have to play. And then you get SMU, Pitt, Louisville, who they play SMU and Pitt. But where do they stand? So we'll do an ACC deep dive as the season gets closer. But just off first glance, I like where Cal is at. And I think that 6.5 is a very favorable line, considering they avoid they avoid Miami and some of the more favorable early season matchups with like Georgia Tech or anybody like that.
Completely agree. Moving to a team that is not necessarily looking for new beginnings, like Cal is, but a team that has a head coach that's trying to just keep his job. Wisconsin. Wisconsin's coming off the worst year they've had since 1991. They went 4-8. I mean, some of it has been bad luck. Like Fickle's first year or second year, it brought in Tyler Van Dyke, gets hurt right away. There's been a lot of there's been talent on the roster the last couple years. Like in 2024, he had the 20th best recruiting class, 2025, 25th, 2026, 67th. That's their recruiting's kind of gone in the shitter. They brought in Old Dominion transfer Colton Joseph to be their QB1. They're kind of right now they're sitting at 23rd in recruiting, 6 4-stars, 17 3-stars, and an average rating per recruit of 88.04. They also have a over-under win total of 6.5. For me, Wisconsin's interesting, not because of the team they'll put out this year, but because I think Luke Fickell's a good coach. And clearly entering your 4th year, not having any season so far at Kentucky that you can be proud of doesn't reflect that. But I also think it's really interesting that when Josh Pate has said this all the time, and I'm just going to regurgitate it. When the Big Ten signed that massive TV deal with Fox, CBS, same thing when the SEC signed their massive TV deal. They had like a unspoken, maybe it was spoken behind closed doors, but an unspoken understanding between their coaches of, hey, you guys who are good isn't good enough anymore. Like, we have to try to raise the bar. We have to try to get as many of our teams into that playoff, into a semifinal, into a conference championship game as possible. And Wisconsin was coming off of like 30 years of just general consistency with Paul Chryst and coaches before that, like some years they would win 10, 11 games, go to the Rose Bowl. Some years it would be like 7-5, but it would never like tank. It would never be terrible. But what I was saying that Josh Pate always says, like, hey, that conversation, the Big Ten, unspoken conversation the Big Ten had with all of its member institutions was good isn't good enough anymore. You got to take a risk. Wisconsin took a calculated risk, hired Luke Fickell. And Luke Fickell was coming off of a playoff appearance at Cincinnati, which at that point was an AAC school, not a Big 12 school. Mm-hmm. So that was a big deal for him to do that. You seem like you're pretty optimistic by it. It just hasn't worked out. How are we feeling about Wisconsin entering Fickell's 4th year? Is this his last year as coach, or is he going to turn it around?
I do think this is the last year of the Luke Fickell era in Wisconsin. From the few Wisconsin fans that I know, doesn't sound like there's a lot of energy or hype around him or this season. It sounds like a lot of people are kind of ready to say, I'm willing to be bad this year if that means Fickell's gone. Which when you lose a fan base, I think it becomes immediately hard. I think as a coach and as players, you feel that. You feel the pressure. You feel the lack of hype and energy. The stadium feels it. Your home, your home atmosphere kind of takes a hit when that happens. So I do think that the air is out of the tires in that regard. And then similarly, I'm looking at their roster. I'm looking at the moves they made this offseason. I'm just not sure it's enough to win 7 games in the Big Ten. You're sticking with your same wide receiver core as last year, plus Zion Kearney, who was from Oklahoma, someone I was really high on, just didn't get a chance last season. But outside of him, you're really sticking with the 3 guys you ran with last year. None of them were good enough to be dominant in the Big Ten. At running back, Abu Sama, he was a solid, good, not great running back at Iowa State in the Big 12 last year. I think in the Big Ten, you probably a little bit tougher competition. I'm just not sure as an RB1, he's going to be the guy that leads an offense. And then Colton Joseph, he had a solid year at Old Dominion. So, again, though, I just 21 touchdowns, 10 turnovers in Old Dominion's conference. You come to the Big Ten, is that going to be enough to win a lot of games? Is he going to be able to playing Old Dominion schedule versus playing a Big Ten schedule is going to be a couple steps up? Is Luke Fickell a good enough coach to get him in a spot where he's going to be able to be effective with Wisconsin's weapons? Similarly, they lost their best offensive line to the transfer portal, and that's always a tough look. And then defensively, I mentioned how with Cal, they brought in a lot of the lost in the depth chart guys from schools like Oregon, Georgia, Texas A&M. And I like that. I feel like those are usually highly rated kids that they're young, haven't gotten a chance yet. There was a similar strategy done by Wisconsin, but instead of the schools being Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, it was Kansas, Oklahoma State, Rutgers. And when you're lost on those depth charts, that isn't always, you're a highly rated recruit that's young. That is oftentimes a little bit more to that than anything else. And again, I've said, I sound like a broken record. I'm just not sure that those guys are enough to come in and win 7 games in a tough Big Ten schedule. And if you dive into the schedule, you start the year off at Notre Dame. I'm so sorry, Wisconsin. That is probably not going to go very well for you. And that's just like
come out of that healthy.
Symbolic. Yeah. Don't lose by more than 40. But that almost feels symbolic to me of like the Luke Fickell final season. Any energy or hype that people might have could get killed in South Bend on Sunday, September 6th. There's just a chance that they go into that game, they lose by 40, and it's just like, all right, yeah, wheels are off. You get a little bit of a comeback with a favorable schedule at the Western Illinois and Eastern Michigan. But then you go at Penn State. I know it's a new team, but that's never going to be an easy win. You get the Pat Fitzgerald Michigan State Spartans. Should be a favorable matchup for Wisconsin, but again,
home too.
Never really know. Yeah, you never know with a Fitzgerald type team. But then you go at UCLA. That's a tough game. Then you get the Trojans, tough game. At Iowa, tough game. Rutgers looks like a win. At Maryland, that's going to be a very new team on the road. That should be pretty even. At Purdue, big rival. They tend to own Purdue, but we'll see how that goes this year. And then another big rival, Minnesota, at home. They're going to have to clean up. Come Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, Minnesota, they're probably going to be sitting at 2 to 4 wins. So they're going to have to clean up that Rutgers through Minnesota stretch. So if you believe in Wisconsin's ability to go 4-0, this over could be enticing. But 3-1 or less, the over looks like it's gone. So I think I'm going to take the under on Wisconsin, and Luke Fickell's probably not going to be the head coach this time next year.
I think so too. And I was just doing the over-unders in my head, and I was right there with you. I think it really depends on that, because you can chalk Notre Dame, probably Penn State, USC, and Iowa up as like definite losses. I hope you can chalk their second and third games up as definite wins. So for me, if you
should,
so for me, it's like, all right, how are they going to do against UCLA? How are they going to do against Michigan State? How are they going to do against Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, and Minnesota? If they can go above 500 against that span, that's an enticing 6.5 to take the over on. I'm not optimistic enough on it. But I mean, last thing I'll say, going back to what I said earlier, it's just like disappointing. You commend Wisconsin for taking the risk, because Wisconsin was one of those Big Ten programs for years that was just like the model of consistency, the model of we might never be elite, but we're always going to be good. Like Iowa, we're always going to be there, but we might not reach the ceiling that other programs do, but we develop well, we recruit good enough, we bring in really tough, physical, hard-nosed players on both sides of the line. We run the ball strong. We took a risk with Luke Fickell. It hasn't panned out. What I'm curious about is what hasn't panned out about it. Is it Luke Fickell? Like, did he just get lucky with a Sauce Gardner, Desmond Ridder team in Cincinnati? Or is it lack of funding, lack of resources? Is it something behind the scenes? Is it an athletic department that's not supportive? I mean, we read last year, I forget exactly what it was, but we read last year, the athletic director made a statement talking about how Luke Fickell's keeping his job, but trying to take the blame off of himself, which was weird. Like, is there problems going on in the athletic department? So there's a lot yet to happen. I guess we'll see. Honestly, the Notre Dame game might be his last game coaching, depending on how bad it goes. But he'll have a chance to at least somewhat salvage it. So we'll see. Last team to talk about before we close it out, and this is a team, Jace, that has the lowest expected over/under win total that of Cal or Wisconsin. We'll shift to the second coordinator that left Oregon this year. And by the way, I didn't plan this based off of coordinators who left Oregon. It's just like, these are teams that are really fascinating to me. Kentucky, they bring in Will Stein. Will Stein replaced Stoops, who was his own model of consistency, of inconsistency. I think they had like 6 or 7 different quarterbacks since like 2019. All of them were from the transfer portal. None of them were homegrown. Will Stein comes in. He brings in Kenny Minchie from Notre Dame. He brings in Lance Hurd from LSU to be his star tackle. He fully is reinvigorating the Kentucky offensive game plan, the offensive schemes there, and kind of just making them less of a defensive first team, more of a, hey, let's go score as much as we can, because the points do things. Right now, they are 21st in recruiting, 4 stars, 21 3 stars, average rating per recruit of 88.1. Last year, they finished 74th. Basically, that was part of the whole recruiting, the coaching transition from Stoops to Stein. So you can almost chalk that up as a wash. The year before, they finished 27th. The year before that, finished 24th. They have an over/under win total of 4.5 wins heading into Will Stein's first year. For me, the most important thing that Will Stein did, and it's one of the first bullet points I wrote down in our doc, Jace, is he is reestablishing what it takes to win in college football. I mean, will it work? We don't know, but he hired an army of analysts. He hired an army of recruiting personnel. Not that Stoops was like this, But a lot of times old school coaches just stick with what they have and they think what I have in the building is enough. But Will Stein's coming from Oregon. Oregon learned this under Mario Cristobal. Like one of the reasons it took a little bit to build it up, build Oregon up from during the Mario Cristobal days was Mario Cristobal is trying to rebuild what it takes to win in today's college football, what it takes to recruit at a high level in today's college football, and some of that includes I need to hire 100 more people to come into the building. It's a massive investment by my athletic department. But I need to hire 50 more people. I need to hire analysts. I need to hire recruiting personnel. I need to hire scouts. I need to hire people to answer texts, like whatever it is. Like there was an old like adage of before Mario Cristobal left Oregon, he was on a interview. He's like, yeah, I get 700 texts out by 10 a.m. every day. Then that's what it takes to recruit. And right now, obviously NIL is part of it, but like you're just trying to bolster what it like internally what it takes to win so you can win on the field eventually. I'm excited for the Will Stein time. What I'm curious about is Kentucky just a ceiling program in the SEC that will never get there, or do you think Will Stein has a chance to fully transform them?
That's a great question. I think at best maybe a window program in his early days. I would need to see more from him in Kentucky to feel like they could be a perennial power. And then kind of similar to that, this season alone, I also think is they could be 10-2, they could be 2-10. They of these three teams, they seem the most volatile in either direction. They went like full overhaul transfer portal on offense this year. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver room, pretty much the entire O-line. It's a mix of productive guys at small schools, guys lost in depth charts at big schools. And then defensively, it's a mix of your cast from last year and a cast of transfers as well. It's a really hard team to predict. There's very little roster continuity from a team that, as you mentioned, was a little outdated and just didn't seem to have the juice. And they also play a tough schedule this year. Just a lot. They play a lot of just those solid SEC schools. You get Alabama, Texas A&M, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, and then one of their out of conference games is always going to be Louisville, and that's also they're a solid program, never really a free win. So that 4.5 sounds low, but it's a tough program. I struggle to rate Will Stein because I always really liked him at Oregon. I thought he was very innovative on offense, but for every time you think that. Some of our most disappointing losses also come at the hands of a poor Will Stein performance. And whether that was the way he ended last year, where there was a lot of rumors that he wasn't focused on Oregon football and kind of was a foot out the door by the time that Indiana game rolled around, it gives a bad taste in your mouth as a fan. I think he's going to have to learn how to focus on the moment and focus on what's in front of him. I think he's probably going to have to give way in regards to he won't be able to be as hands-on on the offense as I'm sure he might want to be as a head coach. But I do think he's doing the right things. I think going with analysts and going with recruiters and building that infrastructure goes such a long way in establishing a consistent, constant winner. Those are the things that I think winning programs do to set themselves above the rest. So I do think he's putting them on a right track. It might take a few years, though. It's hard to build in the SEC. There's just so much talent, so many good coaches. It's just hard. I think it'll take a few years versus Cal could be number 2 in the ACC this year. We probably won't see that out of Kentucky for 2, 3, 4 years.
And I think honestly, like the bad taste in your mouth is probably from the way he left Oregon. And I'm right there with you. It felt like he, like as much as he said he was focused, felt like he wasn't at all. And he could basically tell you he wasn't. I think he would admit it if you gave him truth serum because he had to build Kentucky. He has to win at least 5 games to make people happy this year at Kentucky. There is an aspect of Will Stein, like he's a young shot offensive coach. That's like the new thing in college football. That's a new, like, you're hoping that if he hits, he becomes like Sean McVay is a bad example because he's like the guy that people look to, but you're hoping that he becomes that guy. And you and I are a fan of a team that hired a coach at 34 years old that we wouldn't trade our coach for the world, Dan Lanning. But in saying that, hiring a first-time head coach on a P4 level at that young of an age, despite like all of the wonderful experiences he's had as a coordinator, you're asking him to make mistakes in front of 15, 20 million people, 10, 15, 20 million people, depending on how many people are watching their game. So Will Stein's going to make mistakes. What I'm wondering, that's just natural. What I'm wondering is if they go 3-10, 3-9 this year, and then like 5-8 next year, whatever, because of just the virtues of the SEC building schedule. Is he going to have enough time at Kentucky to actually build it into his vision? Because he's going to make mistakes, I guarantee you, as just a young coach, probably a little cocky in what he believes in his system. All that, nothing wrong with that. There's a reason he's where he is. Confidence matters. But like, you're right. You're looking at the schedule. The ones that I can almost say are guaranteed wins is a tough thing to say in college football. But like Youngstown State and South Alabama. Other than that, man, I can't. They're going to be underdogs in every other game. Alabama at home, unfortunately, South Carolina on the road, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, like Louisville. Maybe if Vanderbilt isn't as good this year with Jared Curtis as a true freshman at quarterback, like maybe at that point of the year, October 24th, at home, Kentucky would be a favorite. Maybe Louisville, they'll be a favorite just by virtue of it being a home game and Will Stein's alma mater. Like, there's aspects to that certainly could come into play, but I'm struggling to find like 4 wins there, 3 wins there, let alone 5. So I don't know. I'm fascinated by what Will Stein could build at Kentucky. I'm hoping to see a Kentucky that isn't a revolving door of quarterbacks, that takes recruiting seriously, isn't just a slow program that like one thing Stoops was really good at is like all of a sudden he's in a 8-11 game against Georgia in the 4th quarter, but he'll get destroyed by Mizzou the week after. Like it just never made sense. And you're just hoping that Will Stein continues to grow that team, builds that team up, and it might just be a rough year one.
Yeah, unfortunately, the SEC, it's frustrating. I mean, it'd be frustrating to be a coach in the SEC. You don't have a lot of grace. Like you can't be bad early because people want to be good right away in the SEC. But on the flip side, it's the hardest conference to build in. It's the hardest conference to go from cellar to, top of the league. There's just so many good teams. There's so many good coaches. There's so much talent in the South. So much of it concentrated in the SEC. It's you if you're a coach in the SEC, the biggest gift you could ever get is patience. And unfortunately, the SEC, like being good is a premium. You have to be good fast. These schools can't afford to be bad for stretches of years at a time. You just lose out on so much money, and you can lose booster interest so fast. And in the SEC, there's so much talent, you just can't fall behind for long periods of time. So it's someone like Will Stein. He could have a really rough year. In reality, they could be a much better 5-7 than they were last year, but he could still be on the hot seat by the end of the year just because people want success that fast. Someone like him, take a little bit more time. Fickle, I'm sorry, man, this is probably your last time. And Tosh, I think he is going to, of these 3 coaches, I think he's going to be the one that at the end of the season, people are going to be like, that guy's doing it right. I think he's going to be the one that people say that to, just not saying because he is, but because I think Cal's got the best shot of being a large improvement from the last couple of years.
Can you just think about what you said, though? The guy who is not the offensive genius in Will Stein hasn't been coached in a playoff game as a head coach in Luke Fickell. And by the way, Tosh Lupoy, like I said earlier, brilliant defensive mind, but I don't think anyone necessarily wants him as their coach just for his X's and O's. It's also for how players get along with it and how he's built programs before, like as an assistant. So what you're saying, like that guy's got something going on there over the quote unquote offensive boy genius, over the coach that coached in the playoff before. You think that, it's part of his conference related, but like we're going to look at Cal by the end of the year and be like, that guy's got something going on there because that guy's seen it built in multiple places and he knows what it takes. And we'll see if he can get Cal to a place where they're flirting with playoff spots. But I feel much more optimistic about Cal in the ACC than Will Stein and Kentucky in the SEC, just to give him time. Also, there's the aspect of Tosh is a alum, and I think there will be a grace period of if it's not going swimmingly right away, it's you got to give him time, and there's fans will at least semi understand that because he's an alum. You want to get that grace. Will Stein, his dad's an alum of Kentucky. He has Kentucky ties, but he's an alum of Louisville, their biggest rival. So There. I'm curious to see how these three coaches will go. If you want us to talk about any 3-2 whatever programs in future shows, please text them to Jason and I. Tweet at us at F4 discussion. Leave a comment on TikTok at flag 4 discussion. Just comment us teams, and we'll work them into the show. And we're also on YouTube at flag for discussion spelled out, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. At flag for discussion spelled out. I feel so good that we had a real off-season show. No more reacting to gambling issues. We get to actually, like, it felt like we talked about football for the first time in like 3 months today.
It was very refreshing. It was very nice. And the time flew by. When I looked up and saw the 1 hour mark, I was like, I could keep going. Why are we stopping now?
This type of show is why we started the podcast. Instead of complaining about rules and scandals and whatever, we wanted to talk about football, talk about previewing, and we pride ourselves on talking about the people and coaches that like other shows don't necessarily spend a lot of time on. Because for me, all of like from Cal to Virginia Tech to Texas is all fascinating. And I know it's the same for Jace.
And sometimes like talking about these three coaches are gonna be fun to track all season. It's a whole nother storyline that most people don't think about.
Let us know if you are. Join us in our Zoom or FaceTime watch party of UCLA Cal on September 5th. We will have a lot of fun doing that. I already gave the socials. Jace, you got anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. It's been an hour and 20 into this. This has been glorious. I'm going to go hopefully see the Angels win. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Hopefully we figure out this VAR thing. Until next time, guys, from myself, from Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flag for Discussion.